So I'm head of programme development at Trees for Cities. So for those of you not so familiar with Trees for Cities, we're an urban greening charity. We operate across the UK and we transform deprived urban areas into healthy green spaces. So we don't just work in schools, we also work in estates as well, parks and streets. And our USP, in a sense, is that we work to fully engage communities in our work. So that's something we put a lot of focus on. Local authorities are a really key partner for us. So we work with local authorities to deliver projects, but we also facilitate access to funding and other capacity building activities. Our new organisational strategy kicks off this year, and with a big focus on climate change and the impact on cities and the role of urban trees in adapting spaces to help us cope with the effects. Just a quick slide to show some recognition we've had the last few years. So we were shortlisted for the Ashton Award in recognition of our work with communities. Our schools programme received charity awards, environment category winner a few years ago, and also in partnership with Lewisham Council, we were highly commended for Sustrain Awards last year. So I've got a number of case studies I wanted to show you. And then I also wanted to talk through a little bit about the barriers and challenges that we've had with this programme, because I know that's of interest to others within the sector, and talk a little bit about the opportunities. So this is the first case study, and this is Abbey Mead Primary School in Leicester. It has problems with surface water, as Emma was just saying with her local school, similar problem here, water flooding on the playground. So in partnership with Leicester Council and Department for Education, we delivered a project over 18 months to co-design new space, install and plant, and run engagement sessions with the school. So the interventions installed there included 2 rain gardens, but also downpipes into planters and a long grass marginal meadow scrape. I've got some more photos here. You can see the meadow scrape on the bottom right-hand side and the rain garden on the top left-hand side. And this is the second rain garden. And you can see here the transition from what it originally looked like on the left to the rain garden after it was planted on the right. And you can see there you can see the flooding that went on in the construction. So a lot of water pooling on that side of the playground. And there's little bridges, you can't see them in that photo, little bridges go over onto the right-hand side where the meadow scrape is. So it's kind of got an amenity play function as well. I wanted to just include this quote from the head teacher because the head teacher there noted the rich learning opportunities that this project provided his school. And that's just a really important point to make in terms of our work with schools. We always have educational outcomes as one of the key outcomes we're working with, as well as the environmental outcomes. So the educational objectives of the school are really tied into the design work for the space, as well as all the engagement activities as well. This is the second case study, and this is Rathburn, and this is a large primary school in South London, and this was a partnership project with Lewisham Council. We also worked with the Greater London Authority, Department for Education, Thames Water, provided funding for this project. And this had 2 large, heavily tarmacked playgrounds. So issues here with flooding, but also with shade as well. In the summer, the playground gets too hot, and sometimes the children are not able to use the space because it is too hot. So interventions here included rain gardens again, but as well as some tree pits and large standards went in, and some seating and planters, so some educational and play features as well. Third case study I wanted to share with you, and this isn't a delivery project as yet, but this is a feasibility study that we've been working on with funding from Natural Resources Wales, and this focuses on Cardiff. We have been working with 5 individual schools there developing a feasibility study. So this has included a problem analysis, which has really highlighted impermeable surfaces, like large areas of impermeable surfaces, as being the real key problem around flooding, the surface flooding in these schools. We've also developed a concept design for each school, so a bespoke concept design, which has included features, again, rain gardens, but also ponds, swales, meadow scrapes, rills, channels, etc. So some quite sort of functional SUDS interventions there. And we've used these concept designs to pull out a toolkit that can be applied to other schools as well, highlighting the kind of common problems you can get in schools, prioritising them and indicating some SUDS solutions. So through this feasibility study, we've calculated using the HR Wallingford tool about a 50% plus reduction in surface water across these schools, just using these simple interventions. And we've also estimated benefits as well using the Syria Best tool. Alongside this feasibility study, we've also developed resources in Welsh and English and a development plan which sets out the opportunity for natural resources Wales in terms of our understanding of where the opportunities could be to do these kind of projects across other schools in Wales where there is medium to high risk of surface flooding. So I just want to talk a little bit about the sort of barriers and challenges, because this is what's really interesting when talking to others within the sector, and hopefully we can pull this out and discuss more in the breakout session as well. But certainly in terms of, I can give our perspective, but really sort of keen to understand how others address these issues as well. So we often get questions around maintenance, and I mean, our approach really through our design process is to try and keep the designs as functional as possible, that work well within a school setting. We also ensure we have senior leadership team buy-in from school before starting the project. This is usually from the head teacher. And we do ask also for a small financial contribution from schools we work with. And we find this does help us reach schools that are really going to be engaged in the project. Alongside this, we also run quite integrated engagement sessions with schools. We work with each school for at least one academic year, and that gives us time on the ground with the teachers and the maintenance staff to really understand how to maintain and use their new playground. Another challenge is around playground design. So we use a co-design approach just to understand the current use of the playground, so that could be integrated into the design, so there's not a kind of friction between sort of new development and how the school likes to use spaces. And we also focus on multifunctional spaces in schools as well. Cost and funding, always a challenge. I suppose with these kind of projects where we're looking at breaking into tarmac basically. So, there is going to be a kind of realistic cost to that. Generally, our projects cost around 75,000 plus per school, and this includes all the kind of hard groundworks, soft landscaping, all the engagement work as well. We tend to get our funding to date from Department for Education for our work in England. 7 water companies fund our work, and as a charity we can access other kinds of funding as well. I wanted to mention impact because it's not so much a challenge as we can show SUDS impact, but it's just been an interesting journey we've been on to understand the impacts of the SUDS project. In Lewisham, we did originally set out to address issues. We did seek to have an impact that would impact a 1 in 30 flooding event with our projects. And actually we reduced that down to a 1 in 5 event as an understanding to be more conservative with the kind of impacts that we can have with these projects. So I think we do target medium to high risk flooding areas, but I think when you've got high risk or very high risk of flooding, then you'd be looking at a more structural project alongside these kind of interventions as well. And last slide, I'm not quite sure how I'm doing for time. I think I've got a minute or two left. I think I'm all right. But I did want to talk about opportunities. I mean, there are so many opportunities, but I pulled out 3 here. And I think the first one to mention is partnership working. We've had really successful partnerships with local authorities over the last 5 years or so working on this programme. Because we're able to offer a holistic approach in terms of the design and installation, planting and engagement, that works really well with local authorities who can then bring the expertise on flood alleviation to the table, and together, we can make a really strong team. I think also just working in partnership, we're able to access funding opportunities and other opportunities that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Another opportunity is multiple outcomes. We're just talking about surface flooding here, but there are lots of opportunities for these projects within schools for addressing issues around health, supporting educational objectives. And this really enables cross-department working. So, for example, we do work in Cardiff with the Cardiff Council of Education team. So potentially there's a way that we can join up on these programmes. And I think when we're looking at multiple outcomes, we've got a real opportunity for cross-department and cross-sector working. And then finally, I wanted to mention climate adaptive spaces. So rather than just talking about SUDS, we could or should be thinking about climate adaptive spaces. So thinking about air quality, biodiversity, heat, and so on. And this sort of opens up so many more opportunities, because then we can look at not just schools, but whole communities and about creating these climate adaptive spaces. So loads and loads of opportunities there. Okay, so that's me. Thank you very much. Looking forward to picking up this discussion in the breakout room.